If someone had told me that a simple bouquet of flowers would change everything between me and Lauren, I would have laughed. But now, staring at those delicate petals on our kitchen table, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. I had never been the kind of person who cared for flowers. They wilt, they take up space, and their scent reminded me of events I'd rather forget. Yet there they were, vibrant shades of lavender and yellow, standing out in the dim morning light. A small card was propped against the vase, simple yet inexplicably heavy in my hands.
Just because.
Lauren. I read the note over and over, my fingers tracing the edge of the card as if it held some hidden meaning. Lauren and I had lived together for 2 years, and in all that time, we had been exactly what we were supposed to be, functional roommates. We split bills without drama, took turns cooking, watched TV together when our schedules allowed. We got along, but that was all. At least, that's what I had always thought. Because now, gripping the small piece of cardstock, I couldn't ignore the way my chest tightened. Lauren had never given me flowers before. She had never looked at me the way she did last night, when she set them down and met my gaze, expectant, uncertain. And the worst part, I didn't know how I felt about it. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, the sounds of the city outside muffled by the weight of my thoughts. Was it just a friendly gesture? Some spontaneous whim? Or was it something else entirely, something I wasn't ready to name? The logical part of me wanted to dismiss it, to go about my morning as if the flowers weren't sitting there, as if Lauren hadn't left that note, as if my hands weren't still shaking slightly. But logic didn't explain the way my pulse quickened when I thought about last night. The way Lauren's expression had shifted when she handed me the bouquet, as if she was waiting for a reaction. The way my breath caught when I saw the softness in her eyes. I set the card down carefully and turned away, forcing myself to move, to do anything other than stand there drowning in uncertainty. I poured coffee, took a sip, and burned my tongue.
Perfect.
At least the sting of it was something tangible, something that made sense. The sound of footsteps made my body tense. I didn't have to turn around to know it was her. Morning. Lauren's voice was low, still thick with sleep. I hesitated before answering. Morning. She stepped into the kitchen, and I could feel her presence behind me, even before I turned to glance at her. She was wearing an oversized sweater, her hair still messy from sleep. She looked soft, at ease. And when her eyes flicked toward the flowers, something flashed across her face. Something unreadable. I swallowed hard. The flowers. You didn't have to. I wanted to. She cut me off, her voice steady, her expression careful. Silence stretched between us, thick and unfamiliar.
I wanted to ask why.
Wanted to understand. But part of me was afraid of the answer. So instead I nodded, forcing a smile. They're nice. Thanks. Lauren studied me for a moment, then gave a small smile in return.
Good.
I'm glad you like them. Then she turned away, moving to grab a cup from the cabinet, as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just turned my entire world upside down. The flowers stared at me every time I walked into the kitchen. They unsettled me, not because they were messy or because of their scent, but because of what they meant. Because of what I couldn't quite understand. The next morning, I told myself it was nothing. Just a random gesture, a kind impulse. But as the day went on, ignoring it became harder. Lauren seemed different. Or maybe it was me. Conversations with her stretched longer than usual. The way she looked at me lingered a little too much. I caught myself noticing details I had ignored before. How she tilted her head when she listened. How she traced the rim of her coffee cup absent-mindedly. The way she laughed at things that had never amused her before. Was I imagining it? Or was something shifting between us? The truth crept up on me slowly, winding through my thoughts like a quiet storm. I liked when she laughed. I liked the raspiness of her voice in the morning. I liked the way she bit her lip while reading. I liked the way her hand would brush against mine, and how my skin would burn in its wake. But liking her, really liking her, wasn't an option. Not with Lauren. Not when we were roommates, bound by an unspoken agreement to keep things simple. So, I did the only thing that made sense. I ignored it. I ignored the flowers sitting on the table, their bright colors practically daring me to acknowledge them. I ignored the way her gaze felt different, heavier, like it was searching for something in me. I ignored the way my heart stuttered when our fingers accidentally touched while passing a plate. I ignored everything. But ignoring something doesn't make it disappear. It only makes it grow stronger, clawing at the edges of my mind, demanding to be felt. And no matter how much I tried to deny it, the truth was clear. I didn't just want to know why she bought me those flowers. I wanted to know what it would feel like if she touched me on purpose. The problem with ignoring something is that, eventually, it demands to be noticed. And it all came crashing down on a random night after we came back from a bar with some friends. Lauren had been looser than usual, laughter spilling easily from her lips, her eyes shining with something unreadable. Maybe it was the alcohol, or maybe it was something that had been brewing beneath the surface for far too long. We stepped inside the apartment, the door clicking shut behind us. The air felt heavier, charged, as if something invisible but undeniable hung between us. She turned to me, her expression unreadable, her eyes flickering to mine before dropping to my lips for just a fraction of a second. "Did you hate the flowers?" she asked suddenly, her voice softer than usual. The question caught me off guard. My throat tightened.
No.
I just didn't understand. Lauren let out a quiet laugh, shaking her head as if she knew something I didn't. "Of course you understood." Something in the way she said it made my breath catch. Before I could think of a response, she took a step closer. Too close. Close enough that I could smell the faint hint of mint from her lip balm, feel the warmth radiating off her skin. My heart pounded. "Lauren." She didn't move away. If anything, she leaned in just slightly, her gaze unwavering. "You keep acting like you don't know what's happening between us. But you do, don't you?" I swallowed hard. My entire body was telling me to step back, to create space, to pretend this wasn't happening. But I didn't move, because she was right. I did know. Lauren reached up, fingers brushing a loose strand of hair from my face. The touch was featherlight, but it sent a shiver down my spine. My breathing turned shallow, my thoughts a tangled mess of panic and want. This was it. The moment where I should say something, where I should pull away before we crossed a line we couldn't come back from. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. Her fingers lingered against my cheek for a second longer before she let her hand drop. Her expression was unreadable, her lips slightly parted as if she was waiting for me to make a decision, to take a step towards something neither of us had been willing to name. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. I should have stepped back. I didn't. Lauren didn't kiss me, but it felt as if she had. My heart pounded wildly, my skin burned, and when she finally stepped back, I was left standing there unsteady, trying to make sense of why my legs felt so weak. In the days that followed, everything shifted. We didn't talk about that night, but the tension was undeniable, thick enough to wrap around us like a second skin. The way she looked at me, the way our conversations stretched into silence, the way I caught myself holding my breath when she was near, it was all different now. And yet, neither of us dared to acknowledge it. Then one evening, I walked into the kitchen and froze. Sitting on the table, in the exact spot as before, was another bouquet. The colors were different this time, deep reds and soft whites, but what made my hands tremble wasn't the flowers, it was the card propped beside them. "You didn't understand the first time. Maybe now you will."
L.
My fingers curled around the paper, my pulse hammering in my ears. What was I supposed to understand? That Lauren had feelings for me? That she was waiting for me to admit I felt something too? The truth was staring me in the face, and yet I hesitated. I traced the ink of her initials with my thumb, my stomach twisting in knots. I could keep pretending, keep pushing away what was growing between us. But as I stood there, staring at those flowers, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to pretend anymore. I didn't want to keep ignoring the way my body reacted to her closeness, the way my mind replayed every stolen glance, every near touch. I didn't want to keep pretending that my heart didn't race when she said my name a certain way. Taking a deep breath, I turned on my heel and headed for her room. My hands felt clammy, my nerves buzzing, but I knocked anyway. Lauren opened the door almost instantly, as if she had been waiting for me. Her eyes flickered down to the card still clutched in my hand, then back up to my face. A slow, knowing smile tugged at her lips. "So, do you understand now?" she asked, voice quiet but steady. I swallowed, the weight of everything pressing down on me. "I think so." She tilted her head slightly, studying me. And my heart felt like it was about to burst out of my chest. But for the first time, I wasn't running from it. "I don't want to keep pretending," I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Something flickered in her gaze, relief, hope, something more. She took a step forward, closing the space between us until I could feel the warmth of her body. "Then don't," she murmured. And just like that, the walls I had built around myself started to crumble. I took a deep breath and made my way to her room. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat, but I didn't stop. There were too many questions swirling in my mind, too many emotions clawing at my chest. Lauren was sitting on her bed, eyes closed, headphones on. She looked so at ease, so unaware of the chaos inside me. For a moment, I hesitated, watching her, afraid of what would happen when I spoke. But then, as if sensing my presence, she opened her eyes and met my gaze. I swallowed hard. "Why the flowers?" My voice was quiet, uncertain, but it was enough. She pulled off her headphones and sat up, studying me. Then, with a soft sigh, she answered, "Because I like you." It was simple, but the words hit like a tidal wave. My stomach dropped, my hands clenched at my sides. She continued, her voice steady, but her fingers fidgeting against the fabric of her sheets. "I know this scares you. I know you weren't expecting it. But I had to do something. I had to try." The world tilted. I had spent so much time running, denying, pretending. And now, here she was saying it out loud, making it real. I should have said something, anything, but my mind was a tangled mess of thoughts and fears. Instead, I did the only thing that made sense. I moved toward her and sat down on the bed. My fingers found hers, tentative at first, then firmer as she laced them together. The warmth of her hand sent a shiver through me, but for the first time, it wasn't fear. It was something else, something terrifying and exhilarating all at once. She squeezed my fingers gently, a silent reassurance. "You don't have to say anything right now. Just be here with me." I let out a shaky breath, nodding. And as I sat there, feeling her pulse against mine, my heart finally found its rhythm. That night, we stayed up for hours talking about everything we had been avoiding, our fears, what could happen if we tried, and what it would mean if we didn't. Every unspoken thought, every lingering doubt, spilled between us in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. It was messy, vulnerable, and terrifying, but it also felt right. At some point, a quiet pause settled between us. Lauren's gaze flickered down to my lips, and my breath hitched. It felt inevitable, like gravity pulling us together. She leaned in, her lips brushing against mine in the softest, most hesitant kiss, as if giving me the chance to pull away. But I didn't want to pull away. I reached for her, deepening the kiss, feeling the way she melted against me. Her hands found my waist, warm and tentative, as if she, too, was afraid of breaking the moment. But the moment didn't break. It only grew, unfolding into something more, something neither of us had the strength to stop. That night, she didn't just kiss me. She unraveled me. Every touch, every whispered name, every slow and deliberate movement made it impossible to deny what had been building between us. It wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just curiosity. It was everything. She placed her hands below my navel, where we all know is our most private part. And then her movements were driving me crazy. In the stillness of the early morning, as the city hummed faintly outside the window, reality seeped back in. The weight of what we had done settled over me like a second skin. Lauren lay beside me, her fingers tracing soft, lazy patterns on my arm, but my mind raced ahead, tangled in uncertainty. What if this doesn't work? I murmured, barely recognizing my own voice. Lauren turned to face me, her expression calm, her thumb brushing gently over my cheek. And what if it does? Her words lingered in the air between us, offering something I hadn't dared to consider. Hope. The answer didn't come immediately. Morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a golden hue over the quiet space between us. I listened to the soft rhythm of Lauren's breathing, felt the warmth of her presence beside me. For a moment, it felt like everything had settled, like the uncertainty of the night before had melted into something softer, something tangible. But my thoughts weren't quiet. They swirled, tangled between fear and longing. I had spent so long avoiding what I felt, running from the possibility of this. And now, there was no more running. No more pretending. Lauren stirred beside me, stretching slightly before turning to face me. "You're thinking too much again," she murmured, her voice still thick with sleep. I exhaled a quiet laugh. "I can't help it." She studied me for a moment, her fingers tracing absent patterns against my arm. "We don't have to have all the answers right now." I wanted to believe her, to hold on to the simplicity of that statement. But what if this changed everything? What if we lost what we had by trying to reach for something more? Instead of answering, I slipped out of bed, wrapping the sheet around me as I padded into the kitchen. The apartment was quiet, the echoes of last night still lingering in the air. And then I saw them. A small bouquet sat in the center of the table, daisies this time. Not as bold as the last ones, not as striking. But there was something about their quiet beauty, their simplicity, that made my chest tighten. A card leaned against the vase, scrawled in Lauren's familiar handwriting. "Not all risks are meant to be feared.
Some are meant to be taken. L."
I stood there, fingers hovering over the card, feeling the weight of those words settle into me. This was Lauren's way of telling me she wasn't afraid, that she wanted this, that maybe, just maybe, I should too. I picked up the bouquet, bringing it close, breathing in the light, earthy scent of the daisies. And as I did, I felt it, hope, creeping in again, filling the spaces where doubt had been. Lauren appeared in the doorway, watching me. "Are you going to keep overthinking, or are you going to take the flowers?" I turned to her, heart pounding, and smiled. "I think I'll take the flowers." And just like that, I chose her. "And you? Would you have taken the flowers, or would you have left them there?"